So in the last video, I said I had two things I wanted to talk about, but I only ended up talking about one. And so the first thing I talked about was power and the fear of it and how good power actually is. And now I want to talk about unity and how it really helps and how much we're missing and how great it would be if we did have it. Because power, when you have power, you can act alone. When you act alone, you can use your power, but when you have unity, you basically multiply the power, right? And we see this with people we consider bad people. We see them use unity negatively. We see it in small ways, like a school board trying to cover up its reputation by, you know, shifting accountability around and never taking the blame for anything. And we see it in much larger ways with politicians. And, the whole Epstein thing was a huge web of all these people unified to do evil, backstab each other and stuff like that. But that's kind of why our brand of unity, if we did have it, would be better. Because you see, unlike bad people, if we had unity and we're virtuous, right? Let's assume we're virtuous and we have like Christian values, you know, our brand of unity would be stronger because we wouldn't be like the bad people. Because when the bad people have unity, they're never willing to sacrifice anything. Because bad people are just out for themselves. You know how a lizard will cut off its tail and run away so that the predator just is left with the tail. That's how bad guys are with each other. They're totally willing to throw each other out from under the bus or out to under the bus if it gives them a little more profit, or even if they just don't like them, if they think there'll be trouble later on. But us, people like us, I feel like we'd be willing to sacrifice our own benefits if it meant the truth got out. I think we'd be willing to admit our wrongs in order to give the group a better judgment of things, or give our leaders better judgments of things, or things like that. And the thing is that as good as this unity would be, we're missing it. We don't really have a cohesive unit that we actually do things through. And the thing is that there's a lot of problems if we tried, because it's not as simple as just, oh, well, let's start being unified. Let's all start. It's not that simple because we've seen a few people that I'd consider leaders in some capacity, but I'm not going to name names because there's no point in starting arguments about who's right or who's wrong right now. But the thing is that I have a few problems with some of the people that are leaders, right? And I feel like it's part of the reason we're not in a better place right now. Um, so, for example, we'd need a leader to be super trustworthy if we did have one as leader of cohesive unit. And, that's another thing, like to what degree is someone a leader? Because we need to agree on that too. Basically, the main problem with trying to get a new leader, in my opinion, would be you'd have to define the goal first. You can't be ambiguous about the goal or what the virtues are because it leaves a lot of room for infighting, and that's just going to halt your any progress towards any actual good you could do. Instead of actually making a change, you're just too busy picking the bugs off yourself. You know what I mean? And another thing is that we'd have to carefully manage what we could legally do. Because let's say we made a cohesive unit, right? There's not a ton, there's a lot of things we have to avoid doing. Like, let's say, I don't know, someone wants a business managed by just Christians, right? So let's say, okay, our group is like defined by Christianity and Christians. And then, okay, well, let's start up a little business, a little store, and I'll hire all you guys. We couldn't do that. We couldn't do anything like that because if people found out, they'd sue us and they'd try to take us down. And it's not fair because we do see other groups clearly have in-group preferences and hirings and other things like that, but for right-leaning people, that just doesn't work. You know, they always enforce the law on us whenever we try to get together. They always try to take us down, especially white people. If if white Christian people tried to make a business owned by them, you know, they always even now, even now when they're not purposely trying to do it, you know, the all these journalists and stuff come out like, "Oh, are they racist? They don't have any black people or brown people working there. I think it's because they're racist." So even if they do it on accident and that's not their goal, which just full disclaimer, I'm not white, so I'm not saying I'm gonna come save the white race or whatever, but I'm saying, if white people wanted to do that or Christian people wanted to do that, which I am a Christian, it would, they would bring the hammer down on us. So we'd have to avoid doing anything like that. And another problem with a lot of leaders I see today is that there's a lack of involvement. And what I mean by that is that there's leaders, sure, but from what I can see, they mainly just say the right things. They're not actually doing much. Like there's like rallies sometimes, and there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of talking about what should be done. And for their credit, it's a lot of good things, and sometimes people do improve just by hearing things that they never heard before. Maybe someone heard an idea that could really improve their life, and that's good and all, but I feel like as a leader, you should really seek to try to bring out the best in people. And I think talking is a very small part of the arsenal you have as a leader. When it comes to being a leader, I feel like you could organize all sorts of things to try to improve the people within the group or even help make change in some ways. But like I said, it does kind of conflict with the legal thing because you got to be careful about what you are and aren't allowed to do. If you gather too many people in one place, maybe it might be considered, some sort of crime or something like that, maybe harassment or something or conspiracy charge or whatever. And, sometimes I think about trying my hand at being a leader, but honestly, I'm not experienced enough to even lead a small group, and I don't have very many resources at all. So, that rules me out. Um, and like I said before, I don't want to name specific people because there's no point in creating enemies, but I really don't see any leaders that I think would make genuine change. And, that's kind of why I feel like we're not very making much progress here on the right leaning side because we're not really doing anything. All we're doing is we got a few people saying the right things, and that's about it. Even the politicians on our side supposedly, they don't even feel like doing much. And it just kind of feels like we're just waiting here to see what happens next instead of actually doing anything ourselves. And, I think hypothetically we could organize and have great leaders if we tried, but, it would be difficult and it might result in more lackluster or even harmful leaders. So, I'm not too sure. I'd like to see unity, and I'd like to see someone else talk about it in a more eloquent way because I'm not too eloquent. But I really feel like it's an overlooked aspect of of changing things. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and that's about it. Goodbye.